d'Aubigny, born 1673. Her dad, Gaston, was secretary to Louis XIV's Master of Horses. He trained up pages at the Palace of Versailles, and no one fights like Gaston. Gaston was certain that Julie was going to be the son that he had never had. So before she could crawl, he had her in short trousers with a sword in her hand, and she was good. At 12, she could beat boys twice her age. At 14, she had fallen in love with a fencing instructor named Saran, and they were on a road trip to Marseille. They were paying their way with fighting festivals during the day and singing tunes in taverns at night. And Julie wore the trousers in this relationship. I mean, really, are you going to fight in a frock? It's such a fuss. But people didn't believe that a woman could wield a weapon as well as Julie did. Surely this Julie is really a gentleman. Jack or Jean-Claude? But damn, d'Aubigny did not do well with being misgendered. If anybody piped up to say, there's no way that you're a lady, Julie would draw herself up to her full height, hand on her hip, and would rip off her shirt and flash at her tits before bashing him in the face. And boobs do not a woman make, but boobs do make a scene. And so Julie d'Aubigny could be seen on the stage at the brand new Opera Marseillaise, singing, not stripping. And although she had no formal training, Julie's voice was interesting. It was lower than your typical soprano, syrupy, silky, downright sexy. I'm mad about the boy, but French and more operatic. I loved it. And it turned out Julie was mad about the boy and mad about a girl. There was a young noblewoman in the audience, kept coming to every show. She couldn't get enough. She was in love, so Julie began to court her. But her parents found out and sent their daughter to a nunnery. But I guess the family hadn't figured out that a same-sex situation isn't going to be a solution to this problem, because there was no problem with Julie joining her girlfriend at the same nunnery. Many evenings in holy devotion, in deep contemplation of the mysteries, until Julie got bored and said, let's blow this joint. But how are we going to escape without your family following us? I know, we'll pretend you're dead. Good plan. This is what Julie did. She waited for one of the older nuns to die. She stole her body, somehow, put it in her lover's bed, and then, to cover up the fact that it's clearly not the same person, set fire to the fucking nunnery. They escape in the confusion, but this is a terrible plan. Everybody sees through it, and so now Julie, the disaster bisexual, has fled to the French countryside with her lesbian lover. For 3 months, they are on the run from the law until finally this young flame of a relationship fizzles out. The noble girl goes back to her family, and Julie goes back to Paris. Off she goes up the road, still dressed in her boy's clothes. And when she gets to Paris, she is looking for something to do. She decides that she's going to go singing songs in seedy bars, and there she is heard by Maréchal, a drunk, retired old singing tutor who comes out of his stupor when he hears this voice. You are amazing. You have got what it takes to have a place in the Paris Opera. Let me train you, darling. She says, I haven't got any money. He says, babe, at this point, I am living only for theatre and booze. You'd be doing me a favour. So he trains her, and by the time Maréchal sadly drinks himself to death, Julie has made her debut on the Paris stage. Her first role, Pallas Athena, and people love her. She's fantastic. Her performance is powerful. Her voice is so unusual. For 4 years, she is the belle of the Paris ball. People write roles for her, and interesting roles. Not all these flirty, lovely sopranos who die at the end of the show. no. She gets warrior women. She gets goddesses. She gets a goddamn magician. How cool is that? Well, at an after-show party, being held actually by a local drag queen, she snogs a girl on the dance floor and is set upon by no less than 3 suitors with designs on this girl's hand. She clearly has a very full dance card. So Julie calls the boys outside, and one by one, in quick succession, she draws her rapier and dispatches them. Their blood stains the streets, and soon the police are on their way, because to duel to the death is capital I illegal. So Julie has to flee to Brussels, where the opera house there are very happy to make a home for this tabloid sensation in her interesting clothes and her scandalous liaisons. She sets herself up, really quite forcefully I have to add, as the lover to the Elector of Bulgaria. But her boozing and her brawling and her blatant bisexuality is a bit too much for this bewildered bureaucrat. He tries to cut ties, but Julie has nowhere else to go. She clings on tight. In the end, he has to give her 40,000 francs to leave him the fuck alone. So Julie goes back home, hoping that she can get a royal pardon from the palace. She pulls some strings, gets a private chamber audience with Louis XIV. She sings, he listens, and the king says, "This is the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. I'm feeling things that I've never felt before in places I didn't even know I had. What did you do? I don't care. You're pardoned. You're pardoned. You're amazing. I love you." So Julie is allowed to be back in Paris. She goes back to the opera house to try and get her old job back, and they say, "No! You are too crazy for us. We have heard from the opera in Brussels that during one of your suicide scenes, you literally stabbed yourself with an actual knife. You have to be this sane to sing in the opera, sister." But then up steps Theranos, and Theranos is an old flame of Julie's, and he's a leading tenor in the company, and he says, "If you won't take her, you don't get me." So reluctantly, they agree. Julie has her old job back, has her old boyfriend back, but things aren't rosy. There's a reason they broke up. Their spats become legendary. There is a point on stage in an actual performance, Julie bites Theranos' ear so hard that it bleeds all over his costume. There is another argument out in the streets where Theranos declares that all of the women in the Paris Opera are whores, and so she rolls up her sleeves and beats him publicly until he apologises. They're both divas, but my God, does it sell seats for the theatre. And then Julie meets the Marquise de Florensac, and she falls deep. The Marquise de Florensac is wealthy, is influential. She is famously the most beautiful woman in France. And they love each other, plain and simple. Now, the Dauphin is obsessed with Florensac, so the two of them ensconce themselves away in Florensac's grand country estate, and they spend 2 perfect years in complete harmony. Finally, Julie is living the kind of love she's only been able to sing about. 2 years. It's heavenly. And then suddenly, Florensac comes down with a fever, and in 2 days, she's gone. And when the love of your life was the most beautiful woman in France, really, what else is there? So Julie retires from the stage, retires from public life entirely, and goes back to living in a nunnery. Hopefully not the same nunnery. And a year later, she passes peacefully. At the age of 33. So, there we go. That is all I have time to tell you. Thank you very much, everybody.